All right, let's bring in now Sky News host Liz Storer and contributor Joe Hildebrand. I hope that last
I think I'm across your position. I think I'm across your position.
Would Joe...
It's not a great look, is it?
This is hypocrisy, and both of them pretend to care about the environment. They want everyone else to pay for the environment, but not themselves.
Yeah, look, I think, as usual, I'm going to disappoint everyone by sort of coming in somewhere in the middle here. Hear me out. I think, look, there is an argument, you know, a Prime Minister's time is precious. We don't expect them to drive or take the bus like the rest of us, and they do have to get to places faster.
A commercial flight is $208
to Newcastle.
$208.
I saw Bridget McKenzie who said that is absurd. Newcastle and Scone are a 2-hour drive away. You might as well not take a plane at all if you're going to fly to Newcastle and then get in the car for 2 hours.
But you mean to tell me there wasn't a more affordable option between private jets and some sort of commercial arrangement?
The PM has Air Force One. He has his own jet. So unless you're calling for that to be taken away, because the PM
One,
has to,
by the way, Toto One.
The PM has to take an Uber everywhere.
Everyone else has to queue up in airport queues, but the Prime Minister is so out of touch.
He's the leader of the country. He's not like everyone else.
Everyone's busy.
Having said that, taking two, you know, as Lady Bracknell said, you know, or to paraphrase her perhaps, to take one private jet may be necessary, but to take two looks like carelessness. And why you wouldn't, I mean, the Prime Minister's security detail, I'm pretty sure I'm not giving away any national security details, is not 14 protective services officers. So I cannot for the life of me understand why they couldn't have got everyone on one private jet, or indeed some of the other staffers, you know, could have gone a slower way, just so you didn't have that awful, awful image. I mean, anyone who knows anything about this issue knows that climate change and private jets do not go together. Every time Prince Harry jumps on one, every time they all rock into Davos, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible look. And frankly, for two smart men, they should have known better.
Liz Storer?
Especially when you're going there to say, and this is what he said after his energy minister and himself flew there on two separate private jets, it is not negotiable. It is necessary. Talking about net zero. I mean, do me a favour, mate. I love these kind of stories because it shows up the complete hypocrisy. You just go, oh, well, clearly the emergency's over, if there ever was one, because they want everyone else to believe that there's an emergency and everything matters. Every minute detail of your life now matters, and we will dictate to you what your emissions footprint is and all this nonsense while they jet around like it doesn't matter. Also, how tone deaf can you be in the middle of a cost of living crisis, splurging $100,000 of taxpayer money, hard-earned dollars by you and I and everybody else out there? The median wage in this country is just $65K. That's more than most people ever hope to earn in a year. And you just splurged it on having your staffers and all your security guys pack into two jets. It is completely inexcusable. How much respect would these men garner if they actually took the low road, if they had done this presser, not out in the Hunter Valley, but in Canberra? And if anyone wanted explanations for that, they could simply say, we are saving the taxpayer money. Because when I ran an organisation that was completely donor funded, I behaved like it. I didn't catch business class. I respected the fact that every single dime I wasn't earning, it was off the backs of people who believed in the cause. And when every single cent you're spending is taxpayer money, why don't you show us the respect that we deserve while you're spending the money that we've earned? It's disgusting.
I mean, a lot of people talk about, no one more so than Anthony Albanese himself talks about his humble upbringings. And it is an incredible story, but he has been in politics for more than 2 decades now, and nothing shows that he's become more out of touch than something like this, where they don't give a second thought about taking 2 private jets, massive waste of money. Joe?
Yeah, I think clearly their brains just weren't functioning properly.
They're just used to the lifestyle of private jets.
That's right. I don't think they thought, let's just take all the private jets we can.
No, they
just didn't think. And look, again, the Prime Minister is always going to have special travel, special accommodation.
They just didn't think. They talk about nothing else but the climate emergency and making ridiculous policies that everybody else has to bleed out of every orifice to afford, Joe. So you can't say, they just weren't thinking.
But the PM has also taken ownership of that electric vehicle program and brought it down so that it doesn't.
The electric vehicle program is actually the least of our problems. What they have done to the energy prices in this country in the name of their green dream is abhorrent. And for them to be behaving like this while everybody else is paying for their ridiculous policies.
Clearly we do need to manage
story though is that because
this is not the way to
because the Prime Minister came in and stepped on Chris Bowen's toes in trying to clean up his electric vehicle mess. I think there was some suggestion in the reports today that there might have been tensions, and that might have been why they were taking separate planes.
They're not talking to each other.
Oh, great.
I wouldn't have thought so.
That's why we had to pay $100K.
I wouldn't have thought so. The PM, Chris Bowen, pardon me, I can assure you, are very, very close. They were both part of, their alliance, their allegiances to each other, both date back to Team Rudd about 15 more years ago, when and Julia Gillard, of course, famously...
When they rolled Beazley.
They did roll Kim Beazley, and then when Gillard and her supporters rolled Kevin Rudd, the price for Bowen's loyalty to Rudd was that he was made immigration minister and so forced to eat a certain type of sandwich. And maybe when he's going out and defending the private jets, he's thinking, this sandwich tastes slightly familiar.
Exactly. Well, Bowen had another shocker today. He tried to defend Labor's over-reliance on confidentiality agreements. Remember last week, I brought you the report that Labor was forcing companies, industry lobby groups, stakeholders to sign secrecy provisions, non-disclosure agreements before being even able to look at policy documents. And also Tanya Blibasek had industry groups leave their mobile phones out of the room before coming in to look at her nature-positive legislation. So there was a lot of pressure on the government to explain why they were using this non-disclosure agreement at a regular basis when they promised transparency from opposition. Well, when questioned about it today, here's what Chris Bowen had to say.
Car companies came to us and said they wanted to share commercial and confidence data with the government and asked for the negotiations or the consultations to be held in that light. And so we agreed to that, and therefore there were those sorts of agreements entered into. But also in terms of the vehicle efficiency standards, there were 2 public consultation papers, thousands of submissions. There was also the preferred model put out, thousands of submissions, all public, all worked through. So there will always be a combination of public consultation and private consultations.
I mean, Liz, Chris Bowen there blaming the car manufacturers, but the reality is this use of NDAs is right across the board in the government.
Yes.
And I would like to hear from the car manufacturers because I'm sure they didn't beg for NDAs before looking at the legislation.
No. And there's ways to make that portion, if indeed the story is true, confidential while not getting everyone to sign gag orders before they're simply coming to a meeting with the government to discuss future policy. We heard the same from people who were having meetings with the government who were from the disability sector, and they were like, why do we have to sign off on all these NDAs? And what a joke this is coming from a government who said till they were blue in the face that their middle name was going to be transparency, transparency, transparency before they got into government. That is the exact opposite of what we're seeing here. And the obvious question is, what is so bad that you have to hide? Why all these gag orders? Why can't these people come in, talk to you about the future of policy, what they'd like to see? Most of them are service providers of some kind. What is the need for the kind of secrecy? Obviously, you have closed-door discussions when actually writing the policies before you take it to the House, before you're actually getting a bill in black and white. These are simply consultative meetings. So what is so bad that you're requiring these people who are basically coming in for a chat and to give their thoughts and to exchange different stats, how their business is going, give you suggestions? Why on earth do they have to sign these NDAs?
Yeah, exactly. Now, meanwhile, the government's under pressure over what's being dubbed in the media Trump-style laws, where they would ban completely visitors or tourists from foreign countries if those countries don't accept the return of detainees. Foreign Minister Penny Wong did an interview with Andrew Clennell yesterday here on Sky, and she seemed to be distancing herself from the idea. Have a listen.
This legislation was about making Australia's immigration system stronger. It was about ensuring that people who don't cooperate with a requirement to return can be penalised. And it was about ensuring that we can have a new power to stop granting visas in certain circumstances to those countries who are refusing to have citizens return. Now, obviously, that's a power which would only be exercised where necessary. It's a power which is one tool in the ways in which we seek to manage the immigration system.
Joe, what do you think about this quite radical reform?
I thought it was actually a really short, sharp and effective and clear way to deal with the problem. It was one of those things which, as soon as I saw it, I could understand how it would work. The messaging on it is really clear and simple and easy to understand, except when Penny Wong explains it. And again, this is, I think, one of the problems with the Labor Party on immigration, which is its Achilles heel and always has been, especially for the left. You actually get this thing and say, right, we're going to get tough on these countries, because the whole problem is that there's nowhere else for these people to go. That's why they end up being let out free, because you can't have indefinite detention. And so the Albanese government put the pressure back on these home countries, says, no, you have to take these people back or we will not take any people from you. It's a fantastic policy, and the coalition should support it instead of blocking it for its own selfish political purposes. But again, you see now the left of the Labor Party, to which of course Penny Wong and Andrew Giles belong, almost sort of tying themselves in knots to get away from it. And as long as they keep doing that, border protection and immigration will continue to be a thorn in the side of the Labor Party. So these people need to just shut up and get out of the way and let it run.